Over the holidays, I'm sure you heard about the tragedy when Grandma got run over by the reindeer. Since Grandma was a pedestrian, didn't she have the right-of-way? Well, since the facts surrounding her demise are fairly sparse, we can make some inferences to determine who had the right-of-way. Also, we'll discuss how you can remain safe as a pedestrian and know the laws as a driver. Believe it or not, despite what you may have been told by your driver's ed teacher, pedestrians do not always have the right-of-way. In fact, as a pedestrian, you have very few right-of-ways. Let's look at Grandma, and let's presume that Santa's sleigh counts as a vehicle on the roadway. If she was crossing the street in a crosswalk with a control signal, then she would have had the right-of-way if she had stepped off the curb when the walk signal was illuminated. However, it would have been illegal for Grandma to cross the street while the wait or don't walk signal was illuminated. If Grandma crossed the street illegally, then she didn't have the right-of-way. If Grandma was crossing the street in a crosswalk with no signal, then any vehicle, including Santa and his sleigh, would have had to have yielded the right-of-way to her as she crossed into his path. However, if Grandma suddenly stepped off the curb and into the path of the sleigh, making it impossible for Santa to yield, then she couldn't claim the right-of-way. Also, did you know that it is illegal to pass a car that stopped at a crosswalk allowing a pedestrian to cross? A driver leaving an alley, roadway, private road, or building is required to yield the right-of-way to a pedestrian that is traveling down the sidewalk that crosses over the alley, private road, building, etc. First off, it is illegal to cross the street outside of a crosswalk between adjacent intersections where traffic control devices are in operation. Otherwise, a pedestrian crossing the street outside of a crosswalk must yield the right-of-way to vehicles traveling on the roadway. Beware though, cities are allowed to enact their own ordinances that prohibit pedestrians from crossing a roadway in a business district or other designated highway unless they are in a crosswalk. Let's imagine though that Grandma wasn't run over while she was crossing the street, but instead she was walking down the road. If a sidewalk wasn't available or accessible, then Grandma should have been walking on the left side of the road or on the shoulder, facing oncoming traffic. As you well know, when Grandma was found the next morning, there were hoof prints on her forehead and incriminating claws marks on her back, whatever that means. I believe that the hoof marks on her forehead were proof that she was walking against traffic like she was supposed to, and therefore, Santa may have been negligent. In short, no. Even if Grandma didn't have the right-of-way, this doesn't give Santa free rein to run down your grandma. Drivers on the road, even fat men in red suits, must exercise due care to avoid colliding with a pedestrian on the roadway. Also, a driver is required to give warning to avoid a collision by sounding their horn when necessary. Additionally, a driver must exercise proper precaution whenever they notice a child or an obviously confused or incapacitated person on the roadway. Why is that last part important? Well, if you will recall, Grandma had been drinking too much eggnog and had forgotten her medication before she stumbled out into the snow. Therefore, even if Grandma failed to yield the right-of-way, Santa had a duty to exercise proper precaution. By the way, have you ever heard of a horn on Santa's sleigh? Santa may have been negligent for his failure to use a horn to warn Grandma. We appreciate you watching our video, and we hope that you and your family had a Merry Christmas. If your grandma has been injured by a reckless reindeer or a negligent clause, you may be entitled to compensation. Make sure that you subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to check out some of the other videos that we published. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. See you next year.